Welcome to the Onfarm Network's 2021 results series. I'm Megan Burns, agronomist for the Onfarm Network program. So let's talk about dry bean fungicide trial results. While 2021 may not have been an exciting year for fungicide response, we'll also take a look at how dry bean fungicide response is kind of shaking out across the whole network, all 10 years of our Onfarm research program so far. So through the Onfarm network, we test different combinations of fungicide treatments depending on disease pressure and farmer interest. And this year we had two trials. We had one that was comparing a single application to no application, and then one that was comparing a single application and a double application. So at these trials, we measure the effect of these fungicide applications on disease pressure, on yield, and then on seed quality as well. So this is where the two trials were located this season. So the double versus single trial was in pinto beans up in the Swan River area, and then the single versus untreated trial was in the Altona area, also in pinto beans. New in 2021, we decided to use the fungicide decision worksheet for managing white mold in dry beans in our trials. So through incorporating this worksheet, which is available on our website if you're interested, we can sort of evaluate the effectiveness of this tool or see how often it's right in determining what white mold pressure will be in the field as we continue to grow our dry bean fungicide trial data set. So this is something that we can add to our trials and learn from as a result. So the way that we're going to go about this is we can obviously see the outcome indicated by the worksheet, whether it classifies the field as low or reduced, moderate, or high risk for white mold. And then we can quantify the disease pressure and any differences in that pressure between fungicide treatments when we take our post-spray disease ratings, which we do at every fungicide trial. And then obviously take a look at yield outcomes and see how all of that compares. However, when evaluating a disease risk assessment tool, moisture is really helpful. And 2021 obviously didn't have a lot of that throughout the season. So we'll look at doing this for several seasons to come. Of course, it'll take a number of sites and situations to determine how well the worksheet is working. In terms of disease ratings, to give you an overview of what we look for, in dry bean fungicide trials, we focus our ratings on foliar and stem anthracnose, and then of course on white mold. So you can see in the top images here, we've got some anthracnose likely on the leaf veins here and on the stem, and then down in the bottom we have white mold. Of course, bacterial blight, which you can see on the leaf here, is very common, and usually it's present throughout the majority of our trials, but it's not a focus of our disease ratings as it's not controlled by a fungicide application, being a bacterial disease. So it's usually present, but it's not something that we focus on. We are rating for anthracnose and white mold, looking at the severity of the disease pressure, as well as the incidence or prevalence of the disease throughout the trial. So incidence tells us how many plants are affected, and severity tells us how bad that pressure is. So how did things look this year? Well, starting with our Altona area trial, no surprise that disease pressure was quite low. So our worksheet rating put us at a reduced risk for disease pressure, which wasn't a surprise. We saw very low severity overall, low disease pressure overall. We had anthracnose that was present, but it wasn't very severe. And then we didn't find any white mold at this trial. Obviously, with low disease pressure, there's not much expectation for a yield benefit of that fungicide application. So we saw no difference in yield between sprayed and unsprayed beans. And then our profit per acre decreases by the cost of that fungicide application as a result, because we're not seeing that return on investment, so to speak. A very similar story at the Swan River trial with very low disease pressure overall. Now, interestingly, the worksheet put us at a moderate risk. There was a little bit more moisture in the forecast up in the Swan River area where this field was, but we didn't find any anthracnose or white mold at all out of the total of 120 plants that we rated at this site. So very low disease pressure. Here we were comparing a single and a double application of fungicide. We didn't find a significant yield difference between those two fungicide treatment options. And of course, we have a decline in profit per acre, very similar to the Altona area trial as a result. Now, if we look at dry bean fungicide response across the network, we've had 16 trials in total starting back in 2016, and we haven't had any significant yield increases in response to fungicide application yet. Now, this may seem a little bit surprising, especially given the fact that this was started in 2016, and 2016 was a little bit of a wetter year, certainly in relation to the last few that we've had. So why haven't we seen any yield response yet? Well, if we take a look at our cumulative average normal precipitation for our dry bean fungicide trial locations and look at that in relation to how much moisture actually fell at those sites. So that's what this graph is doing here. So we have our locations on the side here up until 2020. So this is missing the two 2021 sites. But still gives us a good idea of what's going on. And we take a look at our cumulative average normal rainfall. So that's the blue bars here, how much rain these site locations would normally receive. And then we take a look at how much rain actually fell in the year of the trial. That's the orange bar. You'll notice that we only have 2 sites out of these that actually had rainfall that was close to or exceeded the normal or expected rainfall. But if we dig a little bit deeper, we had very, very low disease pressure at these locations. So we had the environmental conditions that were conducive to disease development at these sites, but not the disease prevalence to result in high disease pressure and a necessary fungicide application. So obviously disease pressure is a combination of weather conditions and field and disease history. Varietal selection probably plays a role in some cases, and so on. There's a lot of things to consider, and it's important to consider all of these factors when making a fungicide decision, which is obviously easier said than done. So looking ahead to what's next for dry bean fungicide trials in the Onfarm network, we'll continue to do more of these in more locations and more growing season conditions. Like we just saw, we really haven't had that combination at a site where we have the weather conditions and the disease pressure to see big benefits of fungicide application. But obviously this is a really important production decision that is critical for producers to make every season in dry beans, because we know how devastating white mold can potentially be to dry bean yield. So we'll continue to evaluate that decision-making worksheet as well as we have more trials in more places and under different growing season conditions, so we can evaluate the efficacy of that tool and see if it needs tweaking or how well it's working to predict where we're going to have white mold pressure and see where we get fungicide response as a result. So a big thank you to all of our On-Farm Network participants. If you're interested in learning more or getting involved, or if you have a trial idea, please feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you.